Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into something really fascinating, the connection between how our own minds build reality and what that can teach us about the future of artificial intelligence and the race to build something that could surpass us all.
So let me start by asking you a question. When you picture the world in your mind, right now, what do you actually see? Is it like a perfect, crystal-clear photograph of reality?
Or is it something a little different? Maybe a bit more impressionistic, a little abstract. Something that feels less like a perfect recording and more like, I don't know, a creative interpretation. Because, that's much, much closer to what's actually happening inside our heads.
You see, our brains aren't just passive cameras. They're actively building what we can call inner images. These are our mental models of the world, but they're not exact blueprints. They're more like unique works of art, shaped and colored by our memories, our emotions, and all of our personal experiences. They are, by their very nature, subjective, and because of that, they're inherently flawed.
And one of the main paintbrushes we use to create these inner pictures is something called confirmation bias. It's basically a mental shortcut where we instinctively look for and prefer information that already fits our worldview, and we tend to ignore or dismiss stuff that challenges it. It's a totally natural human thing that helps us make sense of a complicated world, but it also puts a pretty powerful filter on our reality.
Okay, so that's what happens inside one person's mind. But this is where it gets really interesting. What happens when you take billions of these personal, biased little artworks and you weave them all together? You might think they'd all just cancel each other out, right? Nope. They scale up.
Our individual lean towards confirmation bias ends up creating these massive social patterns. I mean, think about it. Online, algorithms create filter bubbles, feeding us more of what we already like. Then we gather in our own echo chambers, social spaces where those same beliefs just get repeated and amplified. Now, it's not all bad. These shared images are actually powerful tools for social cohesion. They create the shared stories and values that hold communities together.
And these collective images, they become unbelievably powerful. They stop being just ideas. They actually start to feel like reality itself. They influence elections, they shape our cultures, and they define our shared sense of what's true and what's possible. They become the invisible architecture of our entire society.
So, if this is how human minds and whole societies build their picture of reality, what on earth happens when we introduce a powerful, non-human intelligence into that mix? How does it learn to see the world? Our human understanding, well, it's built from the ground up through messy, real-world experience. It's complicated. An AI, on the other hand, often learns through something called self-supervised learning. The best way to think about it is like giving someone a giant library of books, but with all the titles ripped off and telling them to sort them by topic. The AI doesn't get the answers. It has to figure out all the patterns and relationships for itself, building its own kind of inner image from all the data it sees.
And what's incredible is that researchers can now literally map out an AI's train of thought. Now, I know this quote is super technical, but what it basically means is that we can trace the step-by-step logical path an AI takes to get to an answer. It's like we get to see its inner monologue, watching exactly how it's connecting the dots.
And this leads to an unavoidable truth. Since these AI models are learning from data that we created, with all of our biases, our flaws, and our societal blind spots, they inherit them. The AI can literally develop its own version of confirmation bias, doubling down on patterns it finds in the data, even if those patterns reflect a really skewed or unfair version of reality.
This parallel, this link between human bias and machine bias, it shows us exactly why this whole conversation is so urgent. Because right now, the most powerful collective image in the entire world of technology is the race to build an artificial superintelligence, or ASI.
Just a few years ago, the idea of an AI that could massively outthink a human across the board, that felt like pure science fiction. Now, almost out of nowhere, it has crashed into the global conversation with this incredible force, and it's shaping investment, policy, and our whole collective imagination about what the future holds. And this is not just talk. As this quote points out, the race to build ASI is happening right now, at a massive scale. And that comparison to the Manhattan Project, it isn't just for drama. It really captures the urgency, the immense resources being poured in, and the world-altering stakes of who gets there first. But here's the thing, there is absolutely no consensus on what any of this means. The debate among the experts is fierce, and it really boils down to a few key disagreements. On one side, you've got thinkers like Nick Bostrom, who worries about a treacherous turn.
This fear that a superintelligence might act friendly until it's powerful enough to show its true, maybe dangerous goals. But on the other side, you've got someone like Ben Goertzel, who suggests a sordid stumble, the idea that an AI's flaws would probably be really messy and obvious long before it could become a serious threat. This huge divide just shows you how much we really don't know.
So how in the world do we navigate this future? If these systems are, in a really fundamental way, just a reflection of us, our data, our biases, our collective images, then maybe the solution isn't about trying to program a perfect machine. What if we just shifted our thinking? Instead of trying this one-time all-or-nothing shot to hard-code a perfect set of human values, which frankly a lot of experts think is impossible, what if we built a process, a system that's designed for continuous, collaborative alignment where the AI learns with us, not just from us?
And this isn't just some vague idea. We can actually picture what that process could look like. You'd start with experts defining the broad ethical guardrails. Then, you bring in citizen forums to get diverse, real-world perspectives on what actually matters to people. After that, you could use something called swarm intelligence platforms. They're basically tools that help huge groups of people find points of agreement, kind of like how a flock of birds decides which way to fly, to find the consensus and all that feedback. And finally, the AI uses all of this multi-layered input to develop its strategies, creating a constant feedback loop where human society is collectively steering the technology.
And that brings us right back to where we started. As we build these powerful new intelligences that are learning from the giant collage of our collective human experience, we have to ask ourselves a really fundamental question. Are we just building a better tool? Or are we creating a mirror that's going to reflect the very best and the very worst parts of ourselves back at us on a global scale? Or could it be something else entirely? The beginning of a new kind of collective consciousness, a partnership between human and machine. That right there is the question we now have to answer.